discourse tonight is called the Sekha Sutta, the discipline in higher training. In Pali, they call this Abhidhamma, but it's not the same Abhidhamma that they teach from books. This is talking about the higher training directly with your own practice. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country of Kapilavatthu in Nigroda's park. Now on that occasion a new assembly hall had recently been built for the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu, and it had not been inhabited by any recluse or Brahmin or human being at all. The assembly halls, each individual place would put up an assembly hall, and then whatever ascetics or teachers that came through, they would give their talks there, and then they would spend the night there. They would either go all night with the Dhamma talk, or they would sleep there. So it was kind of a special occasion for this particular one being brand new. Then the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and said to him, "Venerable Sir, a new assembly hall has been recently built for the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu, and it has not yet been inhabited by any recluse or Brahmin or human being at all. Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One be the first to use it. When the Blessed One has used it first, then the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu will use it afterwards. That will lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time." The Blessed One consented in silence. Then, when they saw that he had consented, they got up from their seats, and after paying homage to him, keeping him on the right, they went to the assembly hall. They covered it completely with coverings and prepared seats, and they put out a large water jug and hung up an oil lamp. Then they went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and said, "Venerable Sir, the assembly hall has been covered completely with coverings. Seats have been prepared. A large water jug has been put out and an oil lamp hung up. Let the Blessed One come at his own convenience." Then the Blessed One, dressed, taking his bowl and outer robe, went with the Sangha of monks to the assembly hall. When he arrived, he washed his feet, then he entered the hall and sat down by the center pillar facing the east. I read something very interesting years ago now, that when you face the east, you get a lot of energy. When you face the north, you get the least amount of energy. So when you have sloth and torpor, you face the east. If you have restlessness, then you face the north. Sit with your... And after I found that out, I went out and bought a compass. And I checked it out. And it's really true. And if you go to sleep with your head facing the north, you'll go to sleep very quickly and have sound sleep. Seemed to work. I don't know if it works for anybody else, but it sure seemed to work for me. The bhikkhus washed their feet and then entered the hall and sat down by the western wall facing the east. With the Blessed One before them, the Sakyans of Kapvilavatu washed their feet and entered the hall and sat down on the eastern wall facing the west, with the Buddha before them. Then when the Blessed One had instructed, urged, roused, and gladdened the Sakyans of Kapvilavatu with talk on the Dhamma, for much of the night, he said to Venerable Ananda, Ananda, speak to the Sakyans of Kapvilavatu about the discipline in higher learning and higher training. Who has entered upon the way? My back is uncomfortable, I will rest it. Now, this statement right here says that this particular discourse happened at the end of the Buddha's life, because he didn't start having his backaches until the last few years of his life. And somebody asked him one time why he had backaches. Now, he had spent 4 Mahakapas and 100,000 lifetimes purifying himself, but he couldn't purify himself all the way. There was one time in the distant past that he was a fighter, and he would get in a ring and fight, and what he did to the people that he fought was he broke their backs. He would lift them up and come down on his knee and break their backs. So in his last lifetime, the karma of that appeared. So he had this pain. Now, when it says that I will rest it, I'll say in just a second. Yes, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Ananda replied. The Blessed One prepared his patchwork cloak folded in 4, lay down on his right side in the lion's pose, with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware. Now, this is a formula that they use because this particular statement comes up very often. And they added this part to it, but it's not true of this sutta. It says, after noting in his mind the time for rising. He didn't do that. He stayed alert. He didn't go to sleep. He was listening to what Ananda said. So he was just resting his back because it needed to have rest. And that lets you know that arahats still have some physical problems arise from time to time. But they know how to handle it properly. And rest when it needs rest, and when the resting is done and it's okay for them to move around, then they'll do that. There's a lot of discussion with a lot of people that when you become an arahat, you don't have any more suffering. But just the fact that you have a body means that there is suffering. You have to feed it, you have to clean it, you have to take care of it, you have to go to the bathroom. All of that's one form or another of distraction and suffering. When they get off of the wheel of samsara, when they die, then there is no more suffering. But even the Buddha experienced these kinds of suffering while he was alive. It's an important fact, actually. Then the Venerable Ananda addressed Mahanama, the Sakyan, thus. Mahanama, here a noble disciple is possessed of virtue, guards the doors of his sense faculties, is moderate in eating and devoted to wakefulness. He possesses 7 good qualities, and he is one who obtains at will, without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas.
When did that start?
that constitute the higher mind and provide a pleasant abiding here and now. And how is a noble disciple possessed of virtue? Here a noble disciple is virtuous. He dwells restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha. Now, the Patimokkha is the rules for the monks. You're taking 8 precepts, piece of cake. I have 227. And that's the Patimokkha. He is perfect in conduct and resort, and seeing fear in the slightest fault. He trains by understanding the training precepts. This is how a noble disciple is possessed of virtue. You know the rules well. When there is a sangha of monks, every new moon and full moon they get together and recite all of the rules of the Patimokkha. So this keeps that in your mind, so that you start to do something and you realize, oh, that's breaking a rule, and you back away from doing that. And it's the same for you with your 8 precepts. And we try to take the 8 precepts every day, at least when I'm here. And this is not a ritual. This is a reminder to keep those precepts as closely as you can. Because if you break one of the precepts, your mind will get very restless and your meditation will be non-existent. That's the nature of breaking the precepts. So the reason you don't break the precepts is so that your meditation can get deeper and better as you go. If for some reason you happen to break a precept, a spider gets on you and you're not thinking late, and then you realize you just killed it. And your intention was to stop that feeling from being there, but it was also to kill. That will affect your meditation very negatively. So, come to me, tell me you've broken the precepts. We will take the precepts again right then, so it purifies your mind. Now, the precepts are very, very important when someone is dying. If you're with that person while they're dying, if they have, there's 5 different visions that they can have. There's a vision of fire. There's a vision of ogres, very frightening beings. There's a vision of animals. There's a vision of past relatives that have died. And then there's a vision of devas. Now, all of these correspond to different kinds of mental state. Anger, when somebody dies and they start to get angry with somebody in the room, they can have a very strong vision of fire. And what you do at that time as you tell them it's not worth being angry about this right now, come friend, let's take the precepts. If their consciousness is not very strong and they can't out loud verbally take the precepts, tell them to follow this in their mind. And then ask them what their vision is right after that. Because this purifies mind very, very quickly and very, very well. And they can very easily go from seeing a hell realm to seeing a Devaloka, just by letting go of that anger and developing this wholesome mind. Seeing ogres and black beings and things like that in their mind, that generally has to do with a greedy mind. They're thinking about their possessions, and who should get their possessions, and who should take care of them, and how you want to take this possession with you, or what, those kind of thoughts. So again, you give them the precepts, and that will help alleviate that. If they have a vision of animals, that means that they have ignorance in their mind at that time. They're deluded. They're thinking about themselves very strongly. And they're identifying with what's happening with them personally. So you talk with them about the impersonal nature of things, get them to take the precepts. If they have a vision of the family members, there is some attachment to the family members. And if they die at that time, they will be reborn in the human realm. But being a monk, I'm never satisfied with that. I want them to go to the Devalokas. So I give them the precepts then. So keeping the virtue as high as you possibly can, it helps in all ways, not only while you're doing your meditation. When you get off retreat, I'm going to give you 5 precepts. And keep those 5 precepts as closely as you can. And it improves your mindfulness. It makes you more aware of what you're going to do and what you're going to say before you do it or say it. And then you have the conscious decision to either do that or not. But if you break the precept, take them again right there. You don't have to cause yourself to be filled with remorse and anxiety because you broke the precept. Forgive yourself for making a mistake. Now, take the precepts again, and right after you take the precepts, you make the determination, I'm not going to break the precepts again. This still is part of your training, and this is a very important part. See, the first part of your training is practicing your generosity. Now, how do you practice your generosity when you're sitting in meditation? Giving loving and kind thoughts away. You're being very generous with them. So you're practicing your generosity. That's the first part of meditation. The second part of meditation is keeping your virtue. Keep your virtue high. And the third part of the meditation is learning how to still your mind and stay on your object of meditation and have all these other experiences that we'll talk about here in a little bit. And of course, you know, there's always this one clown at a retreat that'll say, okay, I'll keep the 5 precepts. How long do I have to do that? And I generally say, well, we'll start at 100 years and go up from there. Anyway, and how is a noble disciple oh, I've already read that. And how does a noble disciple guard the doors of his sense faculties? On seeing a form with the eye, a noble disciple does not grasp at its signs and features. What are its signs and features?
Eyes, colors,
shape,
hair.
Its signs and features, and that when you get involved in looking at the beauty of this, then the clinging starts. And the clinging is oh, I really like that. Oh, it would be better if it was, this one was, it was changed a little bit. And then, oh, I remember a time when I saw this other thing, and then you're 1,000 miles away thinking about all kinds of different things. That's the problem with getting involved with the signs and features. Now, your eye hits the color and form, eye consciousness arises. The meeting of those three is called eye contact. With eye contact as condition, eye feeling arises. You see this and you say, oh, that's nice. That's a pleasant feeling. Right after the feeling, eye craving arises. I like it. I don't like it. Tightness. And then your thoughts about it. And then your habitual tendency of letting your thoughts ramble on from one place to another and being lost for a period of time. When you are very clear about the signs and features, and you see them, yes, that's color and form, and there's a nice feeling with that, and you relax right then. What happens is you get to see it completely, totally, because you don't have any thoughts pulling your consciousness away. So when you start practicing this form of meditation and practicing the 6 R's, everything becomes more clear. Colors become more vivid. You can stand in front of something that's very nice, and you can allow your mind to feel that pleasant feeling and relax into that and experience it totally without distraction. Now, one of the things that happens in Buddhist circles is somebody will say, they'll come to me and they say, we have some cheesecake. Do you want some cheesecake? I say, sure, I like cheesecake. And they say, you're attached. They haven't got a clue what attachment is. Before they came up and said anything, I wasn't thinking about cheesecake. When they mentioned it, yeah, that's okay. I can have some cheesecake. It's good. It's a pleasant feeling. Fine. And then let it go right then. Don't get into I like it, I don't like it, and all of the thoughts and distractions. So, it's okay to have preferences. Right now, I've started learning more about possibly what the cause of my swelling is, and it might have something to do with diabetes. So what did I do for lunch today? No dessert. Wanted to buy a candy bar? No. I'll get water instead. Wanted something to drink? Water's good. We'll see. Just, okay, let's cut that out. I'm not attached to it. I enjoy sweet things, but I don't have to have it, and I don't think about it when I don't have it. So there's no attachment there. Since if he left the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade him. I really like it, I really want it. Oh, I hate that thing, I don't want that. See, that's the craving right there. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the eye faculty. He undertakes the restraint of the eye faculty on hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, on cognizing a mind object with mind. A noble disciple does not grasp at its signs and features. He doesn't grab onto it. He doesn't try to hold on to it. He allows it to be and relaxes into it. Then he can experience it completely. Since if he left the mind faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade him. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the mind faculty. He undertakes the restraint of the mind faculty. That is how a noble disciple guards the doors of his sense faculties. And how is a noble disciple moderate in eating? Here, reflecting wisely. I always have trouble. It's like my teeth don't want to say that very well. A noble disciple takes food neither for amusement, nor for intoxication, nor for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness, but only for the endurance and continuation of the body. Now, an awful lot of people, when they eat, they will eat very quickly. They chew their food very little and swallow, and they wind up overeating quite often. The Buddha, it is said, that he would eat until his stomach was half full, and then he would take 1/4 water and 1/4 air. And when he put food in his mouth, not even 1 grain of rice went unmasticated. He chewed everything. So a rule of thumb when you're eating is to chew until it turns to liquid in your mouth before you swallow. And this helps you with your digestion a lot. And it also helps very much with being more aware of when you're really full. You're not shoveling it in. Just, okay, that's enough. I don't want any more. Oh, but we have dessert. Fine. You can eat the dessert. I don't want any more. I'm full. You don't eat for any other reason than to keep your body strong so you can do more meditation. Okay? And if you don't eat, then you'll find that it does affect your mind, and you start to get a little bit grumpy. Now, when you eat food, you want to learn, especially when you're a vegetarian, you want to learn the difference between hard food and soft food. And you want to eat it in a balanced way. Soft food, fruits, bananas, papayas, whatever. Hard food would be beans, nuts, those kind of foods. And you want to have the balance of both. A side note, if you're going to eat nuts, you should always soak the nuts for at least overnight before you eat them, because there are enzymes in the nuts that are not very good for your body. Anyway, you eat so that you can continue. Thus I shall terminate old feelings of pain, not from being hungry, without arousing new feelings of overeating. And I shall be healthy and blameless and live in comfort. That is how a noble disciple is moderate in eating. And how is a noble disciple devoted to wakefulness? Here during the day, while walking back and forth and sitting, a noble disciple purifies his mind of obstructive states. In the first watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, he purifies his mind of obstructive states. In the middle watch of the night, he lies down on his right side in the lion's pose, with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware, after noting in his mind the time for rising. After rising, the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, he purifies his mind of obstructive states. That is how a noble disciple is devoted to wakefulness. First watch of the night, 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Middle watch of the night, 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Last watch of the night, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. When I was in Burma, at Mahasi Center, that's what I followed. I went to bed at 11 o'clock, I got up at 3 o'clock. I'd been there for a couple of months, and then the rains retreat came. And the first time I went to see my teacher after the rains retreat started, he said, "How much are you sleeping?" I said, 4 hours. He said, "Why are you sleeping so much?" Okay, I'll sleep less. So I cut it down to 2 hours. I went to bed at midnight, I got up at 2 o'clock. I did that for 3 months. I found some real interesting things that happened during that 3 months. One is I was eating huge quantities of food and losing weight. Because it takes a lot of energy to stay awake. When I got done with that, right after the rains retreat quit, in Burma they were having their social unrest, and they were going around, the army was going around shooting people. So at the end of the rains retreat, they said, all foreigners have to get out of the country. We don't want you here. So I had to leave. I wasn't real happy about that. I was really starting to come onto the meditation real good, and everything was going along great. But I had to leave, so I left, and I went back to Thailand. And then I would go out for alms round in the morning, and generally you go out for alms round at 6 o'clock in the morning. What you do is you wait until the light is enough that you can see the wrinkles in your hand, and you go like that. When you see that, then you can go out and go on alms round. Because by that time, they pretty much have all the food prepared. They've been up since 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning preparing the food. And then I came back from alms round and I ate. And I thought, well, you know, I'm not on retreat now. Maybe I'll lay down and take a nap. And I laid down and I took a nap and got up about 5 o'clock. And I kind of wandered around a little bit and took a shower and did all of the body things that needed to be done. I thought, well, maybe I'll just lie down and take some sleep. So I slept from about 6 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the morning, and I did that every day for about 6 weeks, catching up on the rest that I'd lost from pushing too hard. When you're here, I'm not pushing you very hard. You go to bed at 10 o'clock, you get up at 5 o'clock. 7 hours sleep. If you need to take a rest during the day, take a rest during the day. That makes it 8 hours sleep. You get plenty of sleep. I don't want you walking around being tired. Because if you're tired, then you have all kinds of obstructing states arising. All kinds of distractions. When I first became a monk, I was in Thailand, and I went to this monastery, and I told them that I just wanted to be left alone. And I would sit in a chair and just sit and watch obstructive states and all the mind games that happen. Right after you ordain, doesn't mean that you have a pure mind at that time. So you have all of this nonsense, worldly stuff running through your mind, and these are obstructive states. So I would sit and I would watch all of this nonsense go through, and then I would get up and I would walk back and forth, and I would come and sit and I'd watch it some more. And I did that for about a month before my mind actually started calming down. I wasn't meditating necessarily. I was just generally being mindful and watching how my mind got into its trips. And as you become more familiar with that, then it's easier not to get caught by that. That's why we do this practice. That's why we do the wakefulness, and that's what we're talking about here. And how does a noble disciple possess 7 good qualities? Here, a noble disciple has faith. He places his faith in the Tathagata's enlightenment thus. The Blessed One is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct. Sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable, leader of persons to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He has shame. He is ashamed of misconduct in body, speech, and mind. Ashamed of engaging in evil, unwholesome deeds.
Is that here in the chakra?
Yes. He has fear of wrongdoing. He's afraid of misconduct in body, speech, and mind. Afraid of engaging in evil, unwholesome deeds. In other words, he's practicing his mindfulness in general ways so that this fear and this shame won't arise in him. And it is a practice. You're not going to be perfect with it at first. There's going to be times when you make mistakes. You don't beat yourself up. You're mindful that you did that. One of the things that happens every new moon and full moon, when the monks do their the patimokkha, when they all meet together in a particular place and do the recitation of the rules, all of the monks that sit in the patimokkha, they have to be pure, fault-free. And that means that we have to do a little confession with each other before we do the patimokkha, read the rules. So this is some of the practices that the monks have, and they're very useful. And because monks are monks, that means that we go a little bit overboard in a lot of things and try to keep our roles as close as we possibly can, so that the shame and the fear doesn't arise in him. He has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and consolidates what he has learned. Such teachings as are good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and affirm a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. Such teaching as these he has learned much of, remembered, recited verbally, investigated with mind, and penetrated by view. And this means studying the suttas, memorizing the suttas, reciting the suttas. That's what chanting is supposed to be. But it's gotten into ritualized things where, we have these suttas that are called protections. So we have to recite these protections as part of our practice. But actually, it's knowing the teaching and following the teaching that is so much more important than just empty reciting. That's why I put the two things in at the end at the Dhammapada. Somebody that recites the text very well but doesn't follow the text is like a cowherd watching others' cows. He has no part in the holy life. It's not the reciting of the text, it's understanding that's more important by far. So it's a real interesting thing when you go to some places that they put such emphasis on chanting that they haven't got a clue what the practice is. Now, is that the intent of the Buddha? You'll notice that here we don't have much in the way of rites and rituals. I want you spending your time not learning what these rites and rituals are. I want you spending your time so you can attain Nibbana. You can. Just a short period of time. It doesn't take that long. As long as you follow the directions, not my directions, the Buddha's directions, and don't add anything and don't subtract anything. You will progress along very quickly. And this leads to your permanent happiness. One of the things that happens if you become Sotapanna is that you lose the belief that rites and rituals lead to Nibbana. That's one of the things that happens. You don't have any doubt that what you're doing is exactly right. And you start to begin to truly understand what the impersonal nature of everything is. That's what happens when you become a Sotapanna. Now there are some people that they go much deeper. You don't have to follow the first step, the second step, the third step, the fourth step. You don't have to follow like that. It depends on your understanding of the process of dependent origination. Anyway. He is energetic in abandoning unwholesome states and in undertaking wholesome states. He is steadfast, firm in striving, not remiss in developing wholesome states. And what's that? It's mind. Having that uplifted mind. knowing when your mind first starts to say no, and you let it go and relax right then. Now what happens is you'll notice that your mind is on your object of meditation, and when your mindfulness is very sharp, you'll see that there's all kinds of little things that happen before your mind gets pulled away, and before long your mind starts wobbling like this, and it keeps wobbling and then caught. Okay? As soon as you see that your mind is just starting to move a little bit, relax right there. And your mind will stay on your object of meditation. That's how you purify your mind, isn't it? Staying on your object of meditation is the most wholesome thing you can do. And that includes smiling. He has mindfulness. He possesses the highest mindfulness and skill, observation power, of minds, the observation of how mind's attention moves from one thing to another. When your observation power is very good, you are able to see dependent origination over and over again. And again, before your mind starts to wobble, there's something that happens before that. What is that? You know?
Say what I experienced, but I don't know.
Can I?
Huh?
I've always seen like a concept or an idea, concept type of thing, I guess.
This is for real stuff.
And I experienced just I guess the wobble is the first thing I see. This some little shift or something will come up, and I'll say, "Whoops, where's that going?" And then there's a train that's off.
Yeah, well, what happens right before that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, it feels
Oh
like
yeah,
it's still-
there's something that happens right before that.
To be seen.
I'm not gonna tell you.
Yeah, you can see it, yeah.
There is something that happens before the slightest little wobble. Actually, there's two things that happen. And I told somebody when they left after doing a retreat, they went quite deep in their meditation and said, okay, your job is to tell me what happens before that. So I don't hear from him for a year. Then he writes me an email, he says, I know what it is, it's this. But he only told me about one thing.
You wrote back and said,
And I wrote back and said, what happened before that? You're missing one thing. And I could hear him. He's in Pennsylvania. I could hear him complain to me about that. He is wise. He possesses wisdom in regard to rise and disappearance that is noble and penetrating, and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. That means exactly seeing dependent origination. You hear me talk a lot about dependent origination, and you don't go to other retreats and you don't hear that much at all. And the depth of your practice is much better when you know what you're looking for. And what you're looking for is, how does this process work? How does it work? It seeing the process over and over and over and over again until you start recognizing it very well, and then you see it on more and more subtle levels. That is how a noble disciple possesses 7 good qualities. And how is a noble disciple? One who attains at will. Without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind, and provide a pleasant abiding here and now.
So that's determinations, right? Right?
It's skill at going in and out of whichever jhana you want to go in.
Determinations.
You can start working with the determination. I don't generally teach people determinations until they're real familiar with the meditation. You want to have, there's five powers that you work with once you're good at getting in and out of the 4 jhanas. The power of going into the jhana. The length of time you want to stay in the jhana to the second. Coming out of the jhana. Reflecting on what happened while you were in the jhana. I can't remember the last one. I have to look at my books. But these lead to mastery of the jhana. So you can sit here and in the blink of an eye you can make the determination, I'm going to go in the 4th jhana for 1 second. And you go into the jhana and out. I'm going to go into the 3rd jhana for 3 seconds. You go in and out for 3 seconds. I'm going to go into the jhana for 1 hour, 21 minutes, and 14 seconds. And you can do that. It takes a lot of practice. And the way you start is before you go to sleep at night, you make the determination of exactly what time you're going to wake to the second. Okay? So, and don't make it the same time every day. I'm going to get up at 4:59:34. And when you hit that, then I'm going to get up at 5:01:13. And when you hit that regularly, then you're ready to start practicing for your determinations and mastery. But it is a difficult practice.
Can you also use the same practice on meditation itself?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's all meditation.
Okay.
It's all learning how to develop your mind and set your internal alarm clock.
But like initially.
But when you start working initially with, I say, I want you to sit in the 2nd jhana, go no higher than the 2nd jhana, and I want you to sit in the 2nd jhana for 14 minutes and 28 seconds. And then when you hit that exactly, then you pick other times. All were within 15 minutes. And you change it. And then you go, well, okay, I can do that in the second jhana, let's see if I can do that in the fourth jhana. So you're bouncing around for 15 minutes at a pop. And when you can hit it right on every time, then you do it for half an hour. And you sit in each one of the 4 jhanas for however long. 29 minutes, 58 seconds. 31 minutes, 14 seconds. And when you hit that every time, then you do that for an hour. Okay. When you hit that, then when you get out of that jhana, then I want you to go in a jhana in that jhana for 8 seconds. And then come out. And when you're able to hit that, then you sit for longer periods of time and shorter periods of time. I want you to go into the 4th jhana in 3 seconds, in and out. Once you've done that, you've gained pretty good control. It's not an easy practice, I guarantee it. And there is more to the instruction than what I've just given you. I don't want you to do it right now. But if you want to start working at waking up at exactly the time, then you can do that. That would be fine. And when you can hit it every day for a few weeks, then come and talk to me. I mean, hit it exactly. And how is a noble disciple one who attains at will without difficulty or trouble? The 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind and provide a pleasant abiding here and now. Here, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states. A noble disciple enters upon and abides in the 1st jhana. With the stilling of thinking and examining thought, he enters upon and abides in the 2nd jhana. With the fading away as well of joy, he enters upon and abides in the 3rd jhana. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, he enters upon and abides in the 4th jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. That is how a noble disciple is one who attains at will, without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind and provide a pleasant abiding here and now. Now, each one of these jhanas is a level of your understanding of how dependent origination works. The hindrances are very, very important. They're not your enemy to fight with. They're not something to push away. They are your teachers. As you begin to apply the 6 R's to the hindrance, it starts to lose its energy, and after a while it will fade away, and your mind is pure at that time. That's why you can get into the different stages of jhana, through this understanding of the process of dependent origination, and seeing it over and over again, and practicing your 6 R's.